Welcome to Jameson's Repair Shop. Today I've got my wife's Cadillac SRX in. It's a 2011. I did videos on the wheel bearings and ABS issues we've had with it in the past, but now we have another issue. We have a code P0009, which is the left bank, front bank of this engine. It could be a sensor, it could be a timing chain. These are prone to timing chain stretch, so I'm going to assume it's the worst because if I keep driving it and it is the worst, it will be the worst. So this video here is the start of tearing this. Well, I'm going to start doing some diagnostics, but what I really want to see is the condition of the timing chain. So I may end up pulling the front valve cover off, checking for slack. So that's where I am with it. And hopefully it's not too serious, but hey, it will be serious if we don't address the issue. Okay, to get at the cam sensors on this, that's the place I want to start. To get at where they are, I have to take all this stuff off. So I'll be taking this off, this decorative piece, so that's got the breather box off. You might have seen I struggled a bit with that. It kind of has to come up and turn at the same time. This turbo hose had to be loosened off, and I'll have to get rid of that. Yeah, so there's really not a lot of bolts to take out, just a lot of clips. So there's a bolt there, or nut to take off there, and a 10 millimeter over there. That one, other one was a 13 mil. So that's a 13 mil and a 10 mil. All right, and some clips. There's a little security clip on this one. Pinch it, move it forward. This one you just pinch down and clip it off. And I'll continue on. Okay, I'm back into the meat of it again. I just wanted to say, before I get too far into this video, if you're not mechanically inclined, this probably isn't a job that you should be tackling. If you're willing to learn and take the time, then by all means go after it. But if it's something you don't have, it's outside your scope of work normally, and it's pretty in-depth job. I've had to take the wheel off. And that's no big deal. I mean, we can take a wheel off, but it's all the you have to take the power steering off, so you're going to lose the fluid there. You're going to take the antifreeze. You're going to lose the antifreeze when you take the coolant lines off. Yeah, so I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but this is not just changing the oil in your lawnmower. It's a pretty in-depth job. Just to get to these sensors, you have to take this mount, and then there's this like collar, I'll call it a oxbow collar that goes across the front of the vehicle. You can get the mount off, but you still can't get these, and you can see where I've started backing it out, hoping that I would get it off. I kind of thought I wouldn't, but you still have to get this piece of structure off, goes from one side to the other, just to get at these sensors. So yeah, like I said, it's not a simple task, and if you just want to check the play in the chain, you have to get at the valve cover, take it off, and then the plenum has to come off too, which will, for me, it's probably going to have to come off anyhow, because I'm at the point where going this far, I may as well just plan on changing the timing chains. Anyway, I just wanted to add that. Okay, a little update here. Undid this coolant line. They have 3 little tabs that just clamp on here. The bottom one was really hard to get off. I would say don't break those. I think they're you might have trouble, or this piece could be very expensive. I never checked the price, but I expect it's not cheap. If you're worried about it, you could undo both clamps, take the hoses out of the way. This hose, I just folded it up behind there. You will lose a bit of antifreeze, but you're going to anyway, because you have to take this whole cover off if you go for the timing chains. I chose to take this piece off just to get it out of the way. However, if you're uncomfortable taking that off, which comes off pretty easy, but just don't break the tabs, break the lines, and hopefully there's not an issue. I've never had this engine apart like this before, so I am learning as I go as well. But anyway, hang in there, we'll get her. Alright, like I said, I got this off. I'm going to leave the fuel line on for now, even if I have to take this intake plenum off, which I believe I'm going to have to, plenum, however you say it. This line will have to come off because it goes over top of it. That's a return line. It's like a breather line for the glycol system. But this doesn't look like it has to come off yet anyway. I'm going to leave the power steering pump or reservoir in place for now, because I can work around it. But what I need to do, I need to get this bolt off, these out, this mount off, the bolt in each end of this off, and then there's one in here as well. But first I need to support the engine, so I'm going to go underneath and support the engine. I'll put a jack stand under it, hold it up. Alright, I got my engine supported. I used blocks of wood, so I don't want to damage the oil pan. That's one thing I don't want to have to deal with, is a cracked oil pan. And I also have a jack under the frame, because I have the wheel off. Okay, I've got the power steering line disconnected. So for this car here, if you're going to do this, get yourself one of these little caps, like they're like a vacuum cap, to blank out hoses and things. So the white one fits over that, whatever size it is. And there's the hose, so you want to just put something on the hose to keep dirt from getting in there. And then you can take and swing this up out of the way, because it is right in the way. You could probably do it without taking that off, but without taking that power steering reservoir off, but you'll struggle with it, because what happens is these AC lines are right tight against this bolt, and to get this mount out, I was struggling to get up past that line with everything in place. So, and I'm still struggling. So I may end up taking this yoke off, this aux yoke, I call it a yoke, and see if I can move this. But this is an issue here, and I don't want to pull on these lines too much. They're mounted in there pretty darn good. I might be able to back off. I think if I back off this screw on this one, I'll get myself a little bit more room to work. So let's try that. I took out this clip on the strut tower. I took that clip off, and there's a clip. I don't know if you see it. I took it off down there. I'll show you. It's just a cap that comes off the top. Separate them, and they're just like a wedge. I have the bolts. I just want to show you the bolts. I'll show you. Took the bolts out of the mount. So these are the two that go right into the body. And then there's 3 on top that go through the mount onto the engine. 15 millimeter, all of them. So now I can get my mount off. I had to take, manipulate these lines a little bit. They're still very rigid, but there's enough room to take this mount off using two hands. So there's the mount. It looks to be in pretty decent shape. Well, continue on then. That's the yoke loosened up. These are 18 millimeter bolts. There's 3 of them that I found so far, but this one down here was a real bear. I don't know what engineering we're thinking about at GM. They put everything right in front of it. They didn't leave any room to put a wrench on it even. So I had to use this in conjunction with this ratcheting adapter. So it fits this piece here, and then I adapted it up. So yeah, that's a bit of a bear. You might run into that and you'll have to come up with something. After about an hour and a half, I'm down to where I actually need to be. I took this yoke off, and if you're like me and your memory's not good, just keep the bolts together, because I'll forget. So I just set that aside with all the bolts in it, with all the other stuff. Pretty self-explanatory, but I got in the habit of doing that because I can never remember. Not never remember, but it's easier just to grab the part and have the bolts. Anyway, so now I want to pull the sensors out and have a look at the sensors. So I finally just got to the point after an hour and a half just to get to these sensors. These 2 sensors right here. And now I can get at the other ones too. I'll check all the sensors, make sure they're not damaged. Check the where they actually do their pickup, make sure it's not dirty. But I still think we're going to be going into the engine. That's just my thoughts. Okay, let's pull out one sensor, get the bolt out. Those I believe are 10 millimeter. Give it a little twist. Let's see what we got there. Well, it's pretty dirty, so that could cause some issues. Yeah, I'll keep checking them. And then, we do all the regular oil changes on this engine. And I use Royal Purple oil. So if it's dirty inside, I'll probably stop using Royal Purple. So why am I paying a premium for an oil that doesn't do the job? All right, and that's what we've used ever since we got the car. We bought the car, it had 80,000 kilometers on it. So I just started using Royal Purple every oil change, and we've done them right on schedule. So interesting, bit gummy looking. I wasn't expecting that. I expected those to be clean. So this could be an issue here. Okay, ready to pull the second one out. I put some light on this situation here. So I wanted for you guys to be able to see. So that's the first one right there, came out. And here's the second one. And if they're as dirty as that, I might use the bore scope and try to go up inside and see if the chain's actually loose while I'm turning it. But I'll see how that goes. So I set the bolts aside. I know where they are. I'll forget where I put them. That's for sure. All right, let's pull this one out. Get my hand out. My hand's going to be in the way. But they just turn them out. Wiggle them. They'll come out. Come on. There she comes. All right. So if you're only changing the sensors, well, that's all you really have to do. Wow. Look at that one. That may be just the problem right there. So rather than go deeper in the engine, I'm going to try to put a bore scope up maybe through one of these holes and see, because those shouldn't be like that. That's pretty cruddy. Yeah, I'm rethinking my Royal Purple oil, that's for sure. All right, I'll continue on. Okay, I'm going to bring a little old school into this. Before I can't get a bore scope up in anywhere to see it. I don't know why they didn't put an inspection port somewhere up here, even if you had to take a screw out plug in. Like, I mean, how hard would it have been to put a couple of ports in just to check the tension of the timing chain? Anyway, enough complaining. So old school, you put a wrench or whatever you can get on the crank nut, and you can test how much play is in the chains by how much movement there is in the crank compared to, it goes by feel, because you can't see what you're doing, so you're only feeling. And this engine isn't exactly like isn't like an old school engine. It's the 3 chains in this, but there still shouldn't be a lot of play because they all have their own tensioners and they all have their own guides and everything. So the play should be very minimal. But what I'm finding, if I go like this, so I push a little pressure back like this, and we listen really close, we can hear it. And you can see it too. So you bring it up so it's snug, not pushing it yet, but I'm going to give it a little pull forward, and you watch this. So that's how much movement is in between the crank and the camshafts. I'll go back again and do it again like that. So that's to me, with an engine that has tensioners and everything that are loaded, that shouldn't be an issue. They shouldn't have that play like that. So I'll do it again. Now that car's gone past, and you can actually maybe hear this. All right. There. Okay, I got the valve cover off. That was a fairly big task. Had to take the lower plenum intake plenum off as well. Take a bolt out of here, and I had to take the EGR, or I believe this is the EGR. It goes into the manifold. I'm going to call it the EGR for now, whether it is or not. Had to take that off to move that so I could get that one bolt out. A lot of work just to get one bolt. That took me about an hour just to get that one bolt out. Anyway, so she hasn't jumped her timing on this engine, so that's good. But I'm not really happy. So there's quite a, I mean, I'm putting very little pressure on this, and yeah, it is pulling probably against the tensioner and stuff like that. But still, that's to me is pretty unacceptable. If you, I mean, I can, it's pretty loose. Go like that. I can't hold it and do it, but so yeah, if you just go like that, just slight a bit, it's got a lot of slack in it, which to me isn't unacceptable. And when you're turning the engine by hand, so we get this, the cogs will jump, and that's without any kind of you know, manipulating this at all. So to me, that's getting worn enough to replace them, given the fact that these have a history of jumping the timing chains, or stretching the timing chains, I should say. So I'll continue on. Now at this point, yeah, I'm going to be changing the timing. But yeah, it's you can see, like, there's not a lot. Like, it's worn, it's stretched. You shouldn't be, like, with a full tension on and everything, you shouldn't have a whole lot of movement on those. And there's play in between the gear and there, so they're wore in there. The gears seem to be fine. It's more of the chain is stretched out. All right, we'll continue on. Okay, another little fun fact. I don't know if you can see this or not. This is an idler bolt, and they didn't leave enough room to get that off. So without taking the alternator off. So now I have to go up in here, back these 2 bolts off. There's one right there. There's one right there. Just to get this bolt off. And I don't think you would need to take it off unless you're planning on changing that idler, which I am, because it felt loose to me before I undid the bolt. So I think the bearing is getting worn out, so it's a good chance to change it. But yeah, I mean, if they had made the bolt even a quarter of an inch shorter, would have been very helpful. Anyway, that's my complaint. Variable timing solenoids. I don't know if you can see those or not. I'm using a different camera today, so I'm just fiddling around with it. I'll see if I can zoom in on those. Right there. So there's the variable timing solenoids right there. There's 4 of them in this engine. And I can see it over there, 1, 2, and 3, 4. So I yank them out because I won't be able to get the cover off the way that how close this is to the frame in this car, to the body rather. I won't be able to get the cover off with those in, or at least I don't think I will. So I'm going to pull them off, and I'll probably clean them while I have them off. I'll look at the condition, test them, and clean them while I have them apart. Alright, I got one of the idler. This is a tension idler. The idler for the just the fixed idler was fine, no noise in it. But this one here, and I'm going to get in as close as I can, is scratchy sounding. So let's see if we can hear it. It may not pick up on the camera, but I hear it really well. It's really scratchy sounding. So this one's going to have to be replaced. Oh, sorry. Get you on the camera again. Let's try it again, see if we can hear it. Hard to do it without knocking it all over. One more time. Oh, there it goes. Alright, I get my hand on this camera. So, I take these out. It's pretty straightforward. 10mm bolt. Take the bolt out. Like that. Don't lose the bolt. There's 4 of them, like I said. So then you just hang on to the bolt so you don't lose it, or set it aside, and you give it a little twist. And these pull out very easily. That's what they look like. I've been putting them in this tray here because I'm going to clean those up. I wiped the other ones 2 down that are already out. And then I'm just going to put the bolt back in so I don't lose where it is for now. Keep the bolts where they are. Same with this one. So anyway, I won't make you watch this. So that's how you take those out. Okay, I'm taking the water pump pulley off, and I just put a punch in the hole to hold it, and that's pretty straightforward. Then it'll just hold the bolts, and then you can take them off. Pretty easy. All right, all the idlers are off. And I found the bad bearing in one idler, which would be the adjusting idler. The other one's fine. Alternator's off. Now I'm going to leave the water pump on because I don't really need to take it off to get in here. But next is this crank pulley has to come off. Oh, these are tight. These cars. I just wanted to mention how tight they are. They're tight quarters to work in, but I can tell you from experience, they aren't as tight as Pacifica. When we had an 04 Chrysler Pacifica with a 3.5 in it, I couldn't even get the serpentine belt on. I had to get my wife to do it because I couldn't get my hands in there. So, yeah, these are tight, but there are other vehicles that are worse. And that Pacifica, I took the engine out of that. I couldn't even begin to start to how you would ever do that in the car. Had to drop the whole thing out, which makes sense. Okay, underneath now, taking the harmonic balancer off. I used a 3-jaw puller that I had, just a cheap one. I've had it for years. It seems to work okay. I used an extension just to go in the end of the crank so I don't damage the threads on the crank. I'd rather replace the extension than the crank, or try to deal with stripped threads. They're on there pretty tight, these. So I didn't want the engine to turn while I was doing it, so I put a pry bar in there. Now I got to the point where I can do it with one hand. But I had to hold the bar, and actually I moved it ahead so it went against this cross member on the pry bar to hold it, and then once I got it started, I moved it back so in the straight up, that's where it was straight up and down position. So that'll keep the timing marks in place, or reasonably close. Alright. It's ready to pull the cover off. I went around and did a lot of these bolts. I'm hoping I have them all. I think I missed a couple. But I can't. I was going to set up the time lapse to show it, but there's just no room to show anything and work. But I will show you this little light I have. My backup pack, I taped to the side of my little light. I have these little chargers, and it extends the life of the light quite a bit. I really like this light, the main light. It works really well. The only thing is when you have it on the bright setting, it goes through the battery fairly quickly. In a couple hours it's dead. So I extend it with this little battery cell. Helps out. Okay, ready to get the cover off. I just wanted to point out, I'll just zoom in there. Around the on the SRX, I can't speak to the other vehicles, but on the SRX, This is a 2011 and 2010 to be the same. They did leave enough clearance to take, you can see these bolts here. I really thought I was going to have to pull the power steering pump off, but nope, they go by. This one was very close. It actually touched it, but it slipped over it, no problem. So that's a big lifesaver. And I noticed that on some of these, and maybe they all do, I haven't pulled it off yet, but they have double these little nylon sleeves. Actually, I want to, you know, rather than condemning GM on everything, but I do like that. So I'm going to give them credit for, maybe I don't know if it's their original invention or not, but I'll give them credit for adding those. So they are a nice little touch. So anyway, I'm getting ready to pull this cover off now, and I'll get back to you. The cover started off. Let's see how it goes. We can get this off here. I left all the bolts in because I wasn't sure how many of those had double liners. I'm doing this with one hand, so to bear with me here a bit. And there's still some stuff in the way. So she's coming. The bolts are actually pretty decent to give a pull on. She's still hooked on down there somewhere. There she comes. I did take the water pump off because I figured, well, I've gone this far, I might as well check the water pump. So that's what I've done. All right, there's the cover coming off. All right, I'll get back to you once I get it off because I need two hands. Okay, I've got the cover off this rig, and up top, all the shoes look fairly decent. There's a fair bit of play in this chain here. Exploring a little deeper in this timing setup, and I noticed, you can see it there, how far that's sticking out, that tensioner, chain tensioner. And watch this. Now these change tensioners are supposed to be rigid, and you shouldn't be able to push them back in by hand, but look. So that tells me it's probably all the way to the end of its stroke, or it's failed. And more than likely it's all the way out to the end of its stroke because this chain is stretched. Now the one down here, it seems to be good, but the chain is terribly loose, as I showed before. And if you get it over, the chain is just kind of, you can almost pull that chain. If you get it in the right spot, you can almost pull it right out over that shoe. This tensioner back here, it's solid. It's not moving at all. But this one here is, like I said, that's not good. That's a recipe for bent valves right there. So I'm glad I went further instead of just fooling around with the hopium of cam position sensors. You know, you hope that it's an easy fix, but really in the end, it probably better off to go all the way, unless you have some way of really proving that the cam sensor is gone. But yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of this rubber. This gasket sealer has to come off. So there's a fair bit of cleanup to do there. So I better get at her. Okay, up top. Oops, I almost dropped my light. Sorry. Up top, you'll see the cam lobes it's in position 2 on the crank. So each cam lobe on the top, on the left side, left bank, are flat, and then the two on the right bank are slightly angled. So when you move this into position 1, these will be flat and these will be forward some. So I should be ready to take the chain off, chain and the hardware, and we'll get her back together. I almost forgot to mention what I turned the crank with. That's a 38mm socket. It's a 3/4 drive, so I have an adapter down to a 1/2-inch drive, but that 38mm socket fits perfectly over the end of the shaft. There's like virtually no play side to side. It's a six-point socket, fits over there perfectly. I don't know what that is in 38mm, what that is in SAE. You can look it up if you have non-metric sockets that big. But 38mm, and you can turn the crank, no problem, back and forth. Works really well. I saw it on another guy's video. He used a large socket. Excuse me. He was using a large socket, and he explained that as well. So this isn't my ingenious idea. It belongs to someone else, and for the life of me, I can't remember where I saw it, and I've watched so many videos on doing these engines. So if you were the one that put that up, thank you for that tip. Okay, all the chains off, all the shoes are off, except for the oil pump shoe, which I'll grab when I get back down there. And now it's time to clean up the mating surfaces. Okay, I've got started taking off the sealant that they used here, GM used on these, and I have to say, thanks GM, that sealant is really easy to get off. I'm not done it yet, but I'll continue on. I did a little time lapse that I've played for you. You'll seen that in the time lapse. But yeah, that stuff is that's pretty simple. Good sharp razor blade. Try not to dig in. Don't dig into the mating surfaces. Just go over it easy, and that stuff just comes right off. So that was a surprise to me, because generally when you see that much sealant, it's going to be a while getting it all off. But no, that stuff comes off pretty slick. Cleaning up the timing cover. I just wanted to show the one of the slides in here. And I said earlier in the video about the Royal Purple when I took those sensors out. But really, in all fairness to Royal Purple, I mean, this slide is like, you can see that there's marks in it, but there's no gouging or anything. So I feel I'm probably giving the Royal Purple a bad rap. Also, I went online and I found that there's people had brought up an issue with the crankcase ventilation on these engines, which causes them to build up with, well, this kind of stuff here, this darkness, and this is where these cam sensors were. They come through here, right here on these spots. So you can see how dark that is. But the engine itself is overall, it was in nice shape, and these slides, there's not a mark really for the amount of kilometers on it. There is a little bit down here, but you can just barely feel it with your fingernail, just barely. So, I mean, something that's dragging a chain over it at thousands of RPMs for hours and hours on end, that's pretty darn good. So I will stick with the Royal Purple. I think that you know, and I feel bad about giving them a bad rap, but it looks to me like the crankcase ventilation issue is probably more what's going on here. Another thing I wanted to point out, while I'm in here, you'll see this spot right here. This is the water pump seal on between the crankcase and the timing case cover. So there's this O-ring, odd-shaped O-ring. Well, you'll see this spot right here. It looks like it may have been leaking a little bit, and you see some tarnishing up there. So I'm not sure what that one, but this one looks like it may have been leaking and corroding in that area, just a little bit. So yeah, these engines aren't built perfect, obviously. Anyway, so I am replacing this seal, replacing the water pump seal, all that stuff. So while I'm in here, just wanted to show that to you. There, all the chains are on, tensioners are on. I reused this shoe because the one that came in the kit had a tab broke off on it. I don't think it would affect it any, but I didn't want to take the chance. And this shoe was like minimal wear on these shoes. So I took a chance reusing that one. All the bolts, the 10mm bolts, torqued to 18 pounds. The idlers are torqued to 43 pounds. And that's it. So now I'm waiting for more parts. Waiting for a gasket for the O-ring for there, an inner O-ring and an outer gasket. A new crank seal. I'm going to put that in while I'm here. And an idler, because one of the idlers were gone. The tension idler was gone. So that's it for now. All right. I just wanted to mention that I've seen people complaining, well, not complaining, but mentioning in their own videos that the holes that you use to line up these idlers with the chain, it's quite difficult. I think if you were out, if the engine was out on the bench, wouldn't be no trouble whatsoever. But in the car, it's a bit of a challenge. So I end up using my phone to get up in there and to see where it's a gold link that I'm trying to line up the hole with on the left side is where I had the most trouble. And I did use an Allen wrench to stick through the hole to hold the chain in place once I got it in the right spot. So that's something a person doing this job on their own might run into. Back working on the Cadillac, the 2011 Cadillac with the timing chains. Like I said, the chains are in, and gaskets came. These are the kits I use for the gaskets. Right there, it's a Felpro gasket set. And there's the manifold assembly set. That's the ones I used. That's it, so I better get at her. Okay, I got the cover back on. And no problem, went on pretty smooth. And the only ones that I had to manually do the torque on, well, manually, I did it by guess, by feel, or these three around the power steering pump. And I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but on this SRX, these Cadillacs, you don't have to take that pump off to get those bolts out. One just touches it, and the other ones come out no problem. So you don't have to deal with that. All right, on we go. All right, a little quick update. I've got my water pump back on. I've got my idler back on, alternator back on. I have to put this back on before I do anything else in this area because it's really tight to work. Once I enclose this, it's going to be tough. I have the VVT solenoids back in, and I'm just getting the wire harness back on before I get the belting and everything back on. And there is, and you can't see it right here, or right now, but there's a bolt hole that's reserved for, and I can't really see it, but it's reserved for this tensioner. So there's a spot where where I don't put a bolt right now, and it's shaped a little different on the hole. It's got like it's rounded a tiny bit. Anyway, so now I'll get the tensioner back on. I'll put the harmonic balancer back on, and then I'll go after the mounts, and I'll put the belt on rather, and the pulley for the water pump back on. That's it for now. Got the valve covers back on. I just placed the intake gasket, lower intake gasket. I got this, I believe it's the EGR tube. I'm going to call it the EGR tube. I don't even know if they use them. Whatever that is, I don't even know. I have to wait to do this it's like a vacuum can for the wastegate can for the turbocharger until I can get this turbo hose on. Then I can get it in there and put the bolts back in. They're all very tight in that area. And yeah, so I just kind of left the front for now. I wanted to get all the top on, well, all the lower intake on, and the valve covers. Yeah, going pretty good. Get the coils to put on this side yet. Pretty quick to do that. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Just time consuming. Okay, mounts are back on. Just get some hoses and electrical done up. I got the sensors tied in, back in place. All the sensors, new sensors, new cam sensors. Mounts are tightened up. Just got the power steering reservoir remounted. I have to hook up the line on the bottom. Fellas got to be careful doing this. Make sure you get all the lines tied in. But other than that, it's going pretty good. Faster than taking it apart, that's for sure. There she is. She's all back together. Antifreezing it. So I'm going to give her a start. See how she goes. Alright, first start after the new timing chains have been installed. Let's see what she sounds like. Hopefully it's all good. Alright, I think she needs some power steering fluid. Alright, there she is running. I got some things to do to it yet. Put on the cover back on. I got the wheel well to put in. And check her over again. But that's her. Timing chains are changed. She's running good. Seems to be running good. Got some oil in the power steering so she doesn't whine. That's what was the noise when I first started her. There was a whiny sound for the power steering. That's all in there good. And like I say, I'll have to get this all back together. No leaks that I can see. Alright, we'll leave her at that then. Okay, got the boss's car up and running again. It's running smooth. Everything looks to be back in place. That's her. New timing chains. Sounds good.